The last thing I'm going to show you relating to DRS and HA are the rules and overrides feature. Now, DRS rules are not actually included on the vSphere Foundation exam, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but on your cluster, on the Configure tab under VM host groups, we can define here groups of VMs or groups of hosts. So we can group together certain VMs and we can group together certain hosts. The groups themselves don't do anything. They are just logical groupings. We can then use those groups in the rules tab. So I'm going to create a group called my VMs, and I'm just going to add both of my VMs, again ignoring the VCLS exam of VMs. I'm going to create a host group as well called hosts. I'm going to add both of my hosts into this. And then in VM host rules, I can now define groups. So I'm going to just call rule 1. So we can either keep virtual machines together, separate virtual machines, we can match virtual machines to specific hosts, or we can match virtual machines to virtual machines. So we can add virtual machines to this group. So we're going to put those two. I want to keep those together, or do I want to separate them? Now again, rules will be enforced on all levels of DRS automation, from the most conservative right through to the most aggressive. Again, that most conservative DRS setting only processes rules and maintenance mode. It doesn't process any performance issues at all. We can add virtual machines to hosts. So this is rule 2. So I'm going to say my VMs either must run on these hosts or should run on these hosts. So if both of those hosts are available and working and happy, then we will run these VMs on those hosts. But if they aren't happy, we will run them elsewhere if we have no other choice. Must run. If we cannot start these VMs on these specific hosts, we won't start them at all. Equally say must not and should not. Generally speaking, you don't really want to use rules within DRS, certainly not VM to host rules. Virtual machine to virtual machine rules to keep virtual machines together, yes, you probably do want to do that from time to time. For example, you might want your app server and the database server to be on the same host so that you reduce latency. Equally, if you have two front-end servers which are redundant to each other, you might want to forcibly separate them, because if they're both running on the same host and that host dies, then you lose the benefits of having two of them. So those you probably will want to use. The virtual machine to host group, really you're just making DRS's job difficult. There are reasons why you might want to do this though. I have seen scenarios where some of the hosts have a particular piece of hardware that is required by that VM. I actually had one client who had, believe it or not, a 56k fax modem still plugged into one of their hosts. So one of their virtual machines was absolutely dependent on that. So we had to create a DRS rule to make sure that that virtual machine did not accidentally get started on one of the other hosts that didn't have that modem attached. You sometimes will also have graphics accelerators in them. So if you're doing, again, a VDI environment or something similar, using something like the NVIDIA Grid GPUs to provide VDI desktops to CAD users, etc., then you probably will need to do that as well. But I wouldn't do it just for the sake of it. If you can avoid using DRS rules, if you don't need to, then don't do it, because you're just complicating the job that DRS is trying to do for you. I'll get rid of that rule from there now. VM overrides. This part is on the vSphere Foundations exam, so we need to pay attention to this. So we'll add a VM override I'm going to say our vCenter virtual machine. And we can override at the VM level a lot of the settings that we put into DRS and HA. For example, we might want to say our vCenter, we don't want to move it around that much. We want it to be, we're going to say partially automated, because when it powers on, we want it to be automatically placed on the best host, but we don't want it to be moved during running hours. VM restart priority, our vCenter is actually very high priority. We want to keep that running at all times. So we're going to make that the highest out of the 5 levels for the VM restart priority. So if we lose a host, this vCenter VM will be one of the very first that we start. Again, we can set overrides at the VM level through this for a lot of the HA settings. Of course, I've already been through these HA and DRS settings when we've configured the HA cluster, so I won't repeat myself, but you can see that's what I'm about to do for my vCenter VM. We click Finish, and I now have a VM override to make my vCenter the highest priority for a vSphere HA restart, but also so that it's not going to get moved whilst it's up and running without me specifically doing so.